All right, I feel compelled to look at yesterday's a very full day of January 6th Trump riot, insurrection, coup, anti-democracy hearings held by the January 6th committee in the House of Representatives. Yesterday was a day where we learned some very important things, and we're going to go through them step by step. First and foremost, one question that we've been asking about Trump world's view of the 2020 election is, do they really believe Joe Biden stole it, or do they know Joe Biden won, but they just say it to show that they are on the team? The sort of subsequent question to that is, assuming Trump really believed it or not, either way, when Trump said Mike Pence has the power to send it back to the states, overturn it, whatever, right? The Pence-Eastman plan, as it is become known, did Trump genuinely think that that's something Mike Pence could do? Or did he know that that's not something Mike Pence could do? Maybe the biggest revelation from yesterday in the hearings is that Greg Jacob, former counsel to Mike Pence, told the committee, John Eastman, the lawyer who wrote up the plan for what Pence could do to try to flip the election, John Eastman said to Trump on January 4th, this plan is against the law. This is a critical piece of testimony. Take a look at this.
When exactly did President Trump know that it would be illegal for Mike Pence to refuse to count electoral votes?
Right.
Here is one sample of testimony given by one of the witnesses before us today, the Vice President's General Counsel.
Did John Eastman ever admit, or as you know, in front of the president, that his proposal would violate the Electoral Count
Act? I believe he did on the 4th.
That was January 4th, 2 days before the attack on Congress.
Okay, so we're building a timeline here. All right. Trump retrospectively is saying Pence could have flipped it. I believe Pence could have flipped it. Would have been fine. You know, I know because you watch this show and I know you know this, and I know Pence could not flip it. The John Eastman letter saying, here's how Pence flips it, was bogus, not something that Pence could actually do. Trump was told that on January 4th, which gets us to our next piece of testimony. Jason Miller says to the January 6th committee that on January 5th, Donald Trump dictated most of the letter claiming that Mike Pence could flip the results. Trump was told on the 4th it's illegal. And on the 5th, Trump dictates a letter saying Pence can do it, already knowing that it's against the law.
Did he dictate this statement?
He dictated most of it. I mean, typically on these, I might have a couple of wording suggestions, or maybe I have a sentence or a rough framework or something of that. But I know with specificity on this one that it was me and him on the phone talking through it. And ultimately the way this came out was the way that he wanted to.
So January 4th, Trump is told the plan for Pence to flip it is against the law. January 5th, Trump dictates a statement saying Pence can flip it, even though he had already been told that he couldn't. And then in this third clip, Congressman Aguilar points out that Trump released a statement that he knew to be false on January 5th. That is exactly the point that we are making here. And the committee was able to make the same point.
Even though the New York Times story was indisputably correct, Donald Trump denied it. Trump issued a statement claiming that the vice president had agreed that he could determine the outcome of the election, despite the fact that the vice president had consistently rejected that position. Let's look at what the president said in his statement. Quote, "The New York Times report regarding comments Vice President Pence supposedly made to me today is fake news. He never said that. The vice president and I are in total agreement that the vice president has the power to act." Mr. Jacob, how did the vice president's team react to the statement from the president that the vice president could take an active role in determining the winner of the presidential election?
We were shocked and disappointed because whoever had written and put that statement out, it was categorically untrue.
Okay. So the full story as we now understand it with regard to Trump, and we'll get to Eastman in a second, the lawyer. Trump was told January 4th, this is not something Pence can do. Trump dictated a statement on January 5th saying this is something Pence can do, and later falsely claimed Mike Pence agrees that this is something he can do. None of that was true. So that's Trump. Let's now go to John Eastman. The next question is, okay, Trump was given this framework by attorney John Eastman. Here's how Pence could overturn the election. We now know on January 4th, Eastman said to Trump, this plan is illegal. Okay, let's dig a little more into that. When did Eastman know that it was illegal? Well, he seemed to know it very, very thoroughly and significantly. We're going to look at a clip here. Former Trump White House lawyer Eric Herschel, okay, says he spoke with Eastman on January 7th and told him, you'd better get a great effing criminal defense lawyer because you're going to need it. Not long after that, Eastman started asking for a pardon from Donald Trump. He knew his suggestion was criminal. Let's take a look at this clip.
Mr. Hirschman's account of that call.
The day after, Eastman, I don't remember why he called me, or he texted me or called me, wanted to talk with me, and he said he couldn't reach others. And he started to ask me about something dealing with Georgia and preserving something potentially for appeal. And I said to him, are you out of your effing mind? Right? I said, I only want to hear two words coming out of your mouth from now on. Orderly transition. And I screamed, I said, I don't want to hear any other effing words coming out of your mouth, no matter what, other than orderly transition. Repeat those words to me. And I screamed, what did he say? Eventually he said, orderly transition. I said, good, John. Now I'm going to give you the best free legal advice you're ever getting in your life. Get a great effing criminal defense lawyer. You're going to need it.
Right.
And then I hung up on him.
He knew. They all knew that this was criminal, what they were trying to do. And then we also now have, thanks to the committee, the email. We have an email from Eastman saying, I've decided I should be on the pardon list if that is still in the works. Eastman was so sure that what he had done was criminal and exposed him to prosecution that he wanted a pardon from then President Donald Trump. These are not good people, and they all knew it was against the law. And there were other lawyers saying, hey, to the group that's pushing this stuff, you need lawyers. Remember, MAGA means making attorneys get attorneys. And that, you know, Rudy ended up with an attorney. Michael Cohen ended up with it. It's just, that's what it is. Par for the course. And they were saying all you people should go and get yourselves criminal defense attorneys. Eastman knew, and Trump was at least told. Incredible revelations from the committee. Let's next talk about this idea of hang Mike Pence. All right. So hang Mike Pence. Hang Mike Pence was a rallying cry. It was a chant that was relevant and prevalent on January 6, 2021. Congressman Aguilar, during yesterday's hearings, said that a court filing indicates that a Proud Boys informant confessed to the FBI. If the Proud Boys had been able to get near Mike Pence on January 6th, they would have killed him. It wasn't just rhetoric, hang Mike Pence. The plan was kill him if we get the opportunity. We later learned that they actually did the mob got to within 40 feet of Vice President Mike Pence at the time. Check this out.
Make no mistake about the fact that the vice president's life was in danger. A recent court filing by the Department of Justice explains that a confidential informant from the Proud Boys told the FBI that the Proud Boys would have killed Mike Pence if given a chance. This witness, whom the FBI affidavit refers to as W1,
Right.
stated that other members of the group talked about things they did that day, and they said that anyone they got their hands on, they would have killed, including Nancy Pelosi. W1 further stated that members of the Proud Boys said that they would have killed Mike Pence if given a chance. We understand that congressional leaders and others were evacuated from the Capitol complex during the attack. We'd like to show you what happened after the Vice President was evacuated from the Senate. The Select Committee has obtained never-before-seen photos from the National Archives that show Vice President Pence sheltering in a secure underground location as rioters overwhelmed the Capitol. At 4:19 p.m., Vice President Pence is seen looking at a tweet the president had just sent, a tweet asking the rioters to leave the Capitol. After 4.5 hours spent on working to restore order, the Vice President returned to the Senate floor to continue the certification of electors.
So, had they been able to get their hands on him, they would have killed him. And then you, of course, have, we knew it would happen, Fox News trying to run interference. Here is John Roberts on Fox News saying, well, you know, this wasn't really that dangerous. We subsequently learned that the mob came within 40 feet of Mike Pence.
Let me get your thoughts about this threat against the vice president, because some of the protesters who were there on January the 6th erected a gallows outside of the Capitol building. Now, it's not to say that the vice president would have ever gotten near those gallows, unless, of course, the mob was successful in finding him as he was in the bowels of the Capitol building.
Right. Well, they ultimately came within 40 feet.
There were concerns for his safety, absolutely, on that day.
There sure were, and I think we're going to hear about that, John. I mean, when you go back to that day and you remember, and we're going to see images of the video of the vice president being ushered down the stairs there. Mark Short was with him. Greg Jacob, who we've been hearing from throughout the morning, was with him as well. These were very, very unnerving moments. And the protester video and what they're saying on it, quote, if Pence caves, we will drag him through the streets, is very, very unnerving, very unsettling stuff for any American.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that the protesters were riled up and at least articulating their desire to do violence if a certain outcome did not come to pass.
Right. And we subsequently learned that it was within 40 feet of coming to pass that the mob would reach Pence. So incredible revelations. And, you know, there's been a lot of hemming and hawing about, oh, the ratings or enough people watching or whatever the case may be. We have to think about these hearings as, are they indicative of a necessary criminal referral for whoever, for maybe multiple people? And legal experts increasingly are watching these hearings and saying that the answer is yes. Now, the Justice Department has said, we're watching, we're certainly paying attention. Whether it will come to pass that there are criminal proceedings, criminal charges for any individuals about whom we learn during these hearings remains a question mark, but there is no shortage here whatsoever. And many of the folks involved correctly now needing criminal attorneys. Let me know what you believe will be the outcome here. Find me on Twitter at @dpacman. We'll take a break and be right back. Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpacman.com and use the coupon code BETTER21 for a huge discount. Joinpacman.com. The David Pakman Show is made possible by members who sign up at joinpacman.com. We don't have a money tree or a coin plant of any kind out in the backyard. We depend on people who sign up at joinpacman.com. You get instant access to the bonus show, of course, as well as commercial-free audio and video feeds of the show. You also get the daily show 5 to 6 hours earlier than non-members. Isn't that great? You can sign up at joinpacman.com with the coupon code BIGVOTING22. BIGVOTING22. Let's hear from people in the audience after some time away from live calls. Let's start today with Harry from Columbus, Ohio. Harry, welcome. How are you?
David, can you hear me?
I can hear you beautifully, Harry.
First and foremost, a very happy and healthy paternity to you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
I want to get quickly. Yes, I was at a wedding over the weekend, and one of my wife's relatives asked me a question. They know I'm relatively politically minded, so
Okay.
they said to me after a couple of drinks, they said, "Harry, do you know Dave Ramsey?"
Okay.
And I am not very familiar with Dave Ramsey. I mean, I don't have a lot of assets personally. I have a 401k, but that's about it. And he was like, okay, so Dave Ramsey said very, very good, straightforward advice. I asked him, why do you like Dave Ramsey? He gives very straightforward advice.
Okay.
Like, for example, Dave Ramsey says, if you are paying off your mortgage, you shouldn't buy a BMW. And that's what he said to me. I was, a bit perplexed at first. I was like, okay, there's multiple reasons why you may or may not want to buy a BMW, and I'm sure a mortgage is one of them. But just what is the point of, Dave Ramsey giving people these platitudes? Like, I don't understand.
You've got to keep it simple. Here's the whole thing. Personal finance is simple, but people think it's complicated. So when Dave Ramsey then re-simplifies it for you, people go, this is great stuff because it's so simple. But the things Dave Ramsey says aren't always true. And he's a right-wing religious ideologue who uses supposedly simple financial advice to actually just espouse right-wing political beliefs. I mean, he's anti-vax, anti-mask, he's anti-regulation, all these different things. So my take is sometimes Dave Ramsey says uncontroversially true things, but you can get those same things from a handful of books. In fact, I have a page on my website, davidpakman.com/finance, where I give you 10 or 12 books where if you read them, you don't need to waste any time listening to Dave Ramsey because everything you need to know about personal finance is in those 10 to 12 books. And quite frankly, you could probably read 3 of them and get most of what you need. Just to take the mortgage example, there are lots of people, okay? Now, I know this is not everybody, but there's plenty of people who in a low interest rate environment would say, hey, you know what? I could pay cash for this house, but I want to get a 2.8% mortgage. It's not available anymore, okay? But a year and a half, you could do this. I'm going to save my cash, get a 2.8% mortgage, invest the rest, which over time in the market should make me 7%. And I'm going to get myself a BMW. And it could be a completely sane and rational financial decision. So I get that the ideas are meant to apply to large swaths of people, but almost nothing Dave Ramsey says really applies to everybody. So I just am not a fan. It's not for me, dog,
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I was thinking about the BMW thing specifically, and I'm thinking, what if you're 30 years old, you've just got into a mortgage, but you really wanted a BMW since you were 12 years old. What are you supposed to do? Dave Ramsey says, wait till you're 60. I mean,
right.
That
and this is why a lot of the other financial writers that I follow, people like Ramit Sethi, Nick Majuli, and others, you've got to balance things and not just put everything off forever. Because to a certain degree, there's a reason that you are trying to have a strong financial position, and by the way, if you lease a vehicle, you might lease a vehicle through a business, which makes it a total tax deduction, and you might have a mortgage, and it doesn't mean that leasing a BMW is irresponsible. I mean, I just don't know. It's oversimplification and gurufication, and I'm not a big fan of it.
I really appreciate you pointing out the whole way that Dave Ramsey puts a right-wing spin on things that are unrelated to personal finance. I just really wanted to hear you flesh that out for me. I appreciate you taking my call. And again, happy paternity, happy fatherhood. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you very much. Very much appreciate the call. Appreciate the opportunity. Let's go to Brendan from Jersey. Is it Brendan or Brenda? It's cut off.
It's fine. It's Brendan.
Brendan. Okay. Welcome.
Thanks for taking my call. So my 2 topics for our question would be a 2024 question for the Dems and a question about economics that could be agreed upon by both sides. So
Okay.
Which of those would you think would be more interesting?
Let's do economics.
So the first one would be, with the development of AI and robotics and lack of general skilled labor trending over time, is it time to properly incentivize, destigmatize, and promote vocational schools for skills and trade development, things like that?
100%. I mean, listen, I'm not someone who just says college is for everyone. College doesn't have to be for everyone. And in fact, I think the statistics are that most people still don't go to college. There's a couple different things. One, if everyone has a college degree, the college degree is no longer a filter for certain jobs, and then you just need something else. Is it now graduate school? Is it whatever? So in one sense, college can be the right path for some jobs, and other paths make sense for other jobs. In addition to that, particularly if we are going to see the technological change and advances that we see in energy, in fabrication, in materials sciences, all these different things, we want as many people as possible. We need way more people getting involved in the trades in order to be ready for those coming changes and to get younger people. A lot of these trades skew significantly older, and it's great now that there's a young electrician movement. There's a young plumbing movement and all these other things. They're going to fix this problem of having to flush toilets 10 to 15 times. I know that the young people are going to be able to do it. But yeah, I mean, listen, a lot of those jobs pay really well. They are great opportunities. And when we talk about making education more affordable, when we talk about student loans, when we talk all these different things, we should be talking about trades just as much as we're talking about, traditional 4-year bachelor's degrees. 100%.
Cool. Thanks. I was just going to say, with something like this, be agreed upon by people on both sides of the political aisle. And so if a candidate were to just develop this as part of their platform, would that, potentially garner them more support?
I think so. The problem is just saying, let's pump up trade school wouldn't be enough for either side. And so if you're on the left and you go, let's pump up trade school and do some student loan forgiveness, then the right will say, whoa, we can't do the student loan forgiveness. So I think that one part would have significant appeal. But the question is, what else is part of it? And that's where the disagreements would start.
Right. All right. Well, I have another question, but if you're good, I'm good, David. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We'll get to the next question next time, since we have lots of folks wanting to get in here. Let's go next to Patrick from Alabama. Welcome, Patrick.
Hi, David. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
So in light of Herschel Walker now admitting to 2 additional children today, I was wondering if you had any advice for Raphael Warnock's campaign to take the win home this midterm.
Well, for people who don't know, Herschel Walker is the Trump-endorsed Republican candidate. He has one son that we all know about, Christian Walker, who has a sizable social media presence. And during his campaign, Herschel Walker has been talking about the scourge, or scourge, as Trump would pronounce it, of absentee fathers, particularly in the Black community. Herschel Walker himself is Black. And earlier this week, it was revealed that he has one child that he does not see and for whom he is an absentee father. And then it was known that there are actually multiple others, I think another boy and then a daughter as well. And so it's another one of these examples of the allegations are confessions and projection, and they don't even live by their own values. I actually think that in a normal situation, this would end Walker's candidacy. Like in 20 years ago, this would end any candidate, but a Republican also, because this is so against their stated values. But Patrick, the thing I'm wondering about is, in the modern Trumpian Republican era, will the Georgia voters even care about this? So it's really going to be a test. Now, if you're Raphael Warnock, how do you take advantage of it? Raphael Warnock has the benefit of being Black himself. And so he may be able to, and I don't know how this would play. Okay, I'm not giving advice here. Raphael Warnock might be able to say, hey, you know what? Herschel Walker rightly identified an issue, which is absentee fatherhood. And I, as a Black man, I don't even know if Warnock has kids. If he has kids, he could say, I am living the values that Herschel Walker is saying we should have. He is not. You got to vote for me and say, I'm just thinking out loud here, but at the end of the day, I don't really know that it will make a difference, because if the voters don't care about what Walker does, as long as he's not a Democrat, it's not going to matter in the end.
Yep, I agree with that as well. I think it's going to be pretty tough, even with this coming to light, for Raphael to pull it out.
Oh, you think Warnock's not going to win?
I think it'll be tough, to be honest. I think even just with, like you said, the stated values kind of be contradicted. I think Warnock's going to be tied too much to Biden come November, and the voters are going to punish him for it just because of gas prices. I mean, in the end.
As of earlier this week, they're basically running tied. So I don't know, is that good or bad in Georgia in June? I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Right. Gotcha. Well, thank you, David.
Thank you for the call. Very much appreciate it. Yeah, that's a really interesting race. There's no shortage of interesting races, quite frankly. Let's go next to Nate from Chapel Hill. Nate, welcome. Nate from Chapel Hill, please unmute and we'll be able to talk to each other. I see that you are muted on your end. You must unmute yourself, sir. And Nate, last chance to unmute yourself and talk to me. All right. Nate is insisting on remaining muted. Let's go to Drew from Virginia. Welcome to the show, Drew. What's on your mind?
Hey, David. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you beautifully.
David, I wanted to ask you about something that in regards to mass shootings, that I don't hear either the left or right really talking about.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the forensic psychiatrist, Dr. Park Dietz?
The name rings a bell, but I don't remember much Park Dietz. Yeah,
he's been a witness for a lot of. He's a forensic psychiatrist who's been in a lot of high profile court cases.
Okay.
And one of the things he's talked about is that he believes that the primary reason why we have so many mass shootings is because national media always gives mass shooters such major attention anytime someone commits a mass shooting. They will always lead the story with sirens blaring, a photograph of the killer. They will lead with the kill total, how many were injured. They'll make it round the clock coverage. And he has put out some videos talking about how this has been shown to cause more mass shootings. And he's given an example before that there was a fad going around, I believe it was in the 80s, of people putting bombs in other people's mailboxes, and the media would cover it.
Right.
And then finally the media caught on back at this time that if we stop covering this, people will stop doing it.
Yeah.
And they stopped covering it, and sure enough, the amount of incidents of this happening went down dramatically. And basically, he recommends that the media try to localize these stories as much as possible and make them as unappealing as possible to every other market. And I even wonder sometimes one step further if websites like Reddit, Twitter, whatever, should view this as snuff material, in the sense that, I feel like these are tragedies for the local communities and not necessarily something that needs to be on CNN or Fox News.
I am 100% sympathetic to this idea. I think the difficulty is the practicality, and I'll give you two kind of thoughts on that. But 100%, and if there is no question in my mind, I'm not saying mass shootings would stop if there was no media coverage, right? We still got to deal with the guns. There's no doubt about it. But if the shooters, even if they themselves are dead or are in jail and unable to see the coverage, they know from experience that when you kill 20 people, it's national news for days, if not weeks. And to some degree, particularly for individuals who, as we've seen, they often have no romantic relationships. Sometimes we talked about this incel thing that often it goes on with the mass shooters. They want attention from someone, and that is a way to get attention, even if you don't name them, right? Not naming them, okay, fine, you don't name them, but eventually the picture is shown. Eventually people figure out who it is. I think the difficulty is twofold. Number one, the ratings that these things generate for national media are explosive. And, you know, we cover shootings. For us, they don't get good quote ratings, but I cover it because it's part of the story on guns. I would rather not cover it at all. I would rather not even talk about mass shootings and give them no attention. When all of a sudden the entire discourse around guns and everything explodes, we cover U.S. politics. I kind of have no choice to at least talk about that. But these things generate such great ratings for the 24-hour streaming and news channel. So that's one thing. And number two, objectively speaking, when someone goes into a classroom and kills 20 people, it is news in the way that we've defined news. So it's hard to imagine a world where it gets no coverage. But I agree 100% with the analysis that the coverage itself is a problem.
Do you think at a bare minimum, there could be any type of realistic solution where the mainstream media networks could ever have some type of, this may be naive, but some type of agreement where they at least agree not to show photographs of the killer? Because it's not, that part's really not extremely relevant to the tragedy in a sense. And
it's not at all relevant to the tragedy, but it's relevant to corporate media weaving a story that generates interest. And I don't know how you get corporate media to agree to anything that makes ratings lower, because that's at the end of the day what it's about.
Yeah.
But I completely agree with the assessment of Parker Dietz, as I understand you telling us what it is.
Yeah, Park Dietz. I feel like sometimes when I bring this up, friends of mine or people who I know on the left, I had even posted this on your Discord, and I was getting downvoted, and I felt like it was because I wasn't saying, even though I agree with sensible, like common sense, we need gun control, gun reform.
Yep, of course.
But I feel like if I don't lead with that, like I kind of see this as the bigger factor, even though they're both important.
Yeah, I mean, listen, take it to its extreme conclusion. The extreme example would be, imagine that the shooter knew no one would know about what they did other than the families of the people you kill, and no one else would hear about it. If you look at the manifestos that some of them leave and whatever else, some of them would not do this if they had a certainty that no one would ever find out other than the families of the people they killed, and no one would even ever find out the shooter's name. Some of them would choose something different. Now, maybe they would choose something worse. I don't know. But I think there is something to that. But of course, we need to deal with the guns either way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Agreed.
All right. Thank you for the
David,
call. I
for taking
appreciate it.
Call.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Important and interesting. Let's take a quick break. If you're holding on to talk to me, just hang on a couple more minutes. We're going right back to the phones in a moment. If you value what we do at the David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind the scenes videos, the daily bonus show, the commercial-free daily show, as well as special discounts on merch, including hats, hoodies, mugs, and t-shirts. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. All right, let's get back to the phones and talk to a few more people. We take calls via Discord at davidpakman.com/Discord. Let's go next to, Junie from Chicago. Junie, welcome back.
Great. I'm glad to be back, David. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well.
Good. My question relates to Mike Pence and his praise he's gotten recently.
Okay.
So I've been watching, the hearings for the past, week now, and they keep saying Mike Pence has saved democracy. But in my opinion, it just seems like Mike Pence just kind of did his job, and he shouldn't receive the praise that he's gotten. Would you agree with that?
I completely agree. I mean, listen, it's similar with Liz Cheney. Like, I get there's some courage in breaking with your party. And she said, hey, listen, Trump incited the insurrection and Trump lost. And a lot of Republicans aren't willing to say that. So compared to them, you're like, wow, that's pretty reasonable. But no, you're elected to just do basic things. And one of the things Mike Pence cannot do is overturn election results. And so the idea that he saved democracy, well, okay. I mean, I don't think he could have overturned the election. I think he could have tried and made a mockery of himself and, the Constitution in so doing. But to call people heroic defenders of democracy merely because they didn't attempt a coup is going a little bit too far.
Yeah, that's something I totally agree, because Mike Pence is still a pretty terrible theocratic Republican. So,
Absolutely.
Like his policies are just like I remember, because I used to live in Indiana, and I remember his anti-gay policies, which were just atrocious. So
yeah,
so this praise that he's gotten has been fairly nauseating, because he's still just he did this one good thing, but in his long history of being like a political person, he's just been completely terrible.
Well, it just shows how far we've fallen. It's like he lost and he left, and we're saying it was a defense of democracy, right? And it's just it's the contrast with what Trump did. I get it, but at the end of the day, what happened is he lost and he left.
Yeah, I just completely agree with that, and and I liked your insight. So Dave, that's all I really wanted to get off my chest. And again, congratulations on the baby, man.
Thank you.
That's really good.
Thank you. All right, Junie from Chicago. Thank you for the call.
No problem. Enjoy the rest of your day.
A lot going on there in Chicago. You can tell it's very, very extreme. Let's go next to Sabeto from Pennsylvania, or is it Sabato?
Sabeto.
Sabeto. Okay, welcome.
Yeah. Hi, how you doing, David?
I'm doing well.
All right. I think the best chance we have at winning the midterms and subsequent elections is to, the same way that Republicans use fear. I think we need to use fear as a motivator, sadly. And I think we do this by stating that if we don't vote for Democrats, we are going to be in a right-wing dictatorship soon, and start listing. Be more specific, because I think too often we're not specific enough about what that would look like. This will be a right-wing dictatorship where gay marriage will be illegal, sweatshops will be legal, marital rape will become legal, the age of consent will be lowered, public schools will be eliminated, abortions will become completely banned. Police will have complete immunity. Everything will be completely unaffordable. Journalists will be targeted, and so on and so on.
Absolutely. I've spoken about this before. The reactionary right uses fear-mongering to win elections, but they fear-monger about imaginary things. So when we say we on the left need to do a better job of just telling people what Republicans would turn the country into, we're not stooping to their level, because these are actually the things that they want to do. They tell us we want abortion completely banned. They tell us we need to give police more immunity. They tell us we want even lower taxes on the rich and to overtly create this overclass and not to regulate businesses and eliminate the Department of Education, all these different things. If so, you only have to listen to them. Whereas the things they say will happen if Democrats are in power, they won't actually happen. There will be no more U.S. border. Of course there will be. Deportations went up under Obama from where they were under George W. Bush. Of course, there will be a border. It's going to be communist and socialist. There's like no communists and socialists in positions of power in the United States. There's like two. So I am, when I say, and when you say, we need to accurately present what an unmitigated Republican power structure looks like. We're not using fear in the way they use it. We're just telling you, here's the things that they want to do, and it absolutely should be done.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, my friend. Well, thank you for the call. I appreciate it.
Yep.
All right, there we go. Yeah, it's scary stuff, guys. It really is. Let's go to, is it Wes from Salt Lake City or Wesley? It's sort of cut off.
It's Weston.
Weston, welcome.
Hi. I was wondering what your thoughts are on something I've observed with right-wing and conservative people, is that they seem to have a very United States-centric worldview.
Yes.
Like I lived in Argentina for 2 years, and there was free healthcare, free college, and they're much poorer than the United States.
Yes.
So, and then we have other things like, sorry, I'm really nervous.
You're doing great.
We have, examples of other countries that are, comparable GDP or per capita GDP, and they have much lower gun homicide rates. And how would you, I guess my thing is how do we convince these people that these policies are possible? Free healthcare, affordable healthcare, universal healthcare, or free college that would help us compete on an international level as citizens of the world, or that we could lower homicide rate by gun. How do we convince them that these are possible? Because it seems like they think it's not possible, but I've seen it. It exists in the world.
The outlier is actually the United States on a lot of these issues. It's the U.S. that has, of the rich countries, we're the one that has this wacky healthcare system. Of the rich countries, we're the one that has this amount of gun crime and gun violence. There's no question about that. I think unfortunately, there's not an easy answer. A lot of Americans are brought up never really thinking about the rest of the world, and they think the United States is just the way everything is, rather than realizing it's sort of like what's the allegory of, is it Plato's cave or what? It's this thing of if all you ever see are the shadows cast by what's behind you, you would believe that the world is made up only of those shadows. And only when you turn around and you see what is actually there can you understand kind of what the world works like. And if you grow up very US centric, you don't go anywhere else, you don't learn about any other place, you think the US is, quote, normal and everything else is weird. But the US is actually the outlier in so many of these different ways. I think it's an educational thing at the bottom line.
Yeah, it almost contradicts their worldview that the United States is exceptional in every way, because we're underperforming in all of these areas, and if we really are exceptional, can't we do better than these other countries?
Yeah, in many ways, the U.S. is exceptional among rich countries in how bad some indicators are. Among rich countries, infant mortality is much higher than in many other wealthy countries, and gun violence is obviously off the charts, and the degree of inequality is off the charts. Percentage of children living in poverty, all these different things. And it's a real uphill battle to climb. I don't know that there's one way to enlighten everybody. Hello. All right. Thank you. I think we've lost you, but I very much appreciate the call. And that is going to do it for calls for today. I'm so glad I was able to speak to so many of you. I will take calls again, and I hope to hear from you next time. We'll take a quick break and be back right after this. Follow us on social media. Interact with the David Pakman Show community. See exclusive content. See when we're taking calls live. And stay up to date on other big show announcements. We post daily. Find us on Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, and TikTok. All right, it's time for the mailbag. You can email info@davidpakman.com if you have something to say. It might be featured on the show. Keep it polite, keep it substantive, keep it productive. Yeah, only like 5% of people do, but we have a lot of those 5% to be featured today. Let's jump right into some of these. Max wrote in, and Max, very, very upset, says, will you admit you were wrong about Russia? David, you incredulously made fun of Trump when he was talking about Russia. You even pretended or purposely were ignorant and said you don't even know what he's talking about. Will you ever admit you were wrong and Trump was right? Michael Sussman is on trial for exactly what Trump was talking about. It turns out the whole Russiagate scandal was generated by the Hillary Clinton campaign, personally approved Hillary Clinton, then surreptitiously fed to the FBI. Will you ever acknowledge that, or will you continue to pretend like this didn't happen? Well, in fact, I can't think of anything in particular that I was wrong about when it comes to Russia. Michael Sussman was acquitted by a jury. Now people are saying, oh, the jury wasn't a good jury. Well, that's the process we have. And I mean, listen, I never said Trump was going to be caught on video plotting stuff with Putin. We were nuanced and specific. in terms of what we thought went on. And so I'll admit, I have no problem admitting I was wrong about things when I'm wrong about them. Max also writing, when will you admit that the Wuhan lab story is not only real, but leftists and big tech censored us for years for talking about it, and you have no problem with that? Same with the Hunter Biden laptop from hell story. Yep, I covered both stories. We follow evidence. And that's it, Max. I'm sorry. You're sort of living in a fantasy world. Okay, Jumpin' Jack Flash wrote in and said, I watched your rebroadcast of Trump's Wyoming speech. I quickly learned from your narrative interruptions during Trump's speech that you're quite a moronic a-hole. Good job. Perhaps your mother should have aborted you. What a beautiful message of peace and love and productivity. You know, when I get a message like this, I really think to myself, I should reconsider my opinions and political views, because this is it's just so respectfully written, and it just really makes you think introspectively, could I be wrong? And so I am going to revisit all of my political views thanks to this email. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, Richard wrote in. Richard says that he joined Trump's platform Truth Social, which Trump calls Truth Central.
Truth Central.
Yeah. Richard says, so David, I was jaw-dropped for the first 3 minutes after joining Truth Central. After that, I realized it's literally 90% trolls. It's a turd spiraling the drain. Yeah, there's a lot of bot-like and sort of troll-like activity on there. And I joined sort of like as an experiment. You know, I'm not really expecting any kind of major dialogue or anything like that there. But I encourage others just to check it out. And the replies to the things I post are extremely nuts. Very, very nuts. It could survive. I mean, listen, they quite literally cloned Twitter. The website is just a copy of Twitter. And so to the extent that Twitter is successful, at least Truth Social, now I'm saying it Truth Central, at least Truth Social is starting with like a layout, a user experience that kind of makes sense. But I don't know. If you told me a year from now Truth Social will be huge, I'd be like, yeah, maybe. If you told me a year from now Truth Social will be shut down, I'd say, yeah, that's plausible too. Justin wrote in about gun control. Justin from Dallas, or JR from Dallas, as he goes by, says, David, relatively new listener, would love to hear your thoughts on the debate technique that gun rights folks use when debating gun control of assault weapons. They tend to start lecturing the control advocate on the technicalities of the guns to show their supposedly informed knowledge. It's ridiculous. How would you respond? Well, yes, it's very popular when we start saying, hey, look, like assault style rifles keep being used in mass shootings. There's a couple approaches they'll take. One is they'll say most gun deaths are from handguns. And it's like, yes, that's true. That's a different problem. There's really three problems, actually, when it comes to gun violence, or gun deaths, I should better say. It's death by suicide with a gun, what we might call one-off gun homicides, which includes one or two victims. Remember, it's only a mass shooting when it goes beyond that, either to 3 or 4 victims, depending on which statistics you look at. So then you've got your sort of like typically handgun-based incidents, which are 1 or 2 victims. And then you've got your mass shooting. So one technique is they'll say, more people die from handguns. What, are you going to ban handguns? It's like, well, no, we're proposing different things. When it comes to the assault rifles, semi-automatics, large capacity magazines, etc., we want age limits. We want, all these different things. Separately, let's talk about the handgun piece as well. So one important thing is to say we have many issues with firearms and we have different solutions for each of them. Then they'll get into what is an assault style rifle anyway. I can change the appearance of this firearm and make it not an assault rifle, but it's still sort of the same firearm. Or I can show you a firearm that looks different, but still technically is an assault rifle. What we have to do is just kind of zoom out and go, okay, but hold on a second. The same type of firearm continues to be used in mass shootings frequently. Whether I can identify every example of it doesn't really matter. We can have informed opinions about military conflicts without knowing every last detail about military strategy or tanks or whatever the case may be. And it's really sort of a red herring to avoid talking about the most important thing. So you've got to take control back of the situation, I think, is the point I'm trying to make. AJ wrote in about the night before the January 6th insurrection. And AJ said, David, sir, Marjorie Taylor Greene has the same shoes as the person of interest in the DC pipe bombing suspect the night before the January 6th insurrection. What do you think, David? Is it just a coincidence? Dozens of people have written to me about this, and they've said, we have no suspect for the pipe bombing yet. The gait of the individual sort of seems like it could be Marjorie Taylor Greene. It seems like it could be a woman rather than a man. These are I don't know if that's true. People write to me. And then most recently, the shoes worn in the surveillance video by the pipe bomber are shoes that Marjorie Taylor Greene also owns. Listen, everybody's right about all those things. Big picture, I agree with all those things. It sort of looks like it could be Marjorie Taylor Greene's gait. These are the shoes that Marjorie Taylor Greene has been seen wearing. We don't have a set. It's all true. It's completely circumstantial. It's completely speculative. It is truly starting to get strange that there's still no suspect for the DC pipe bombing attempt from January 5th into January 6th. I don't know what to think about it. Could it be Marjorie Taylor Greene? At this point, I can't rule it out, but it is very speculative and it should be investigated for sure. Stephanie wrote in and says, thanks for the membership sale. David, sir, because of your irresponsibly cheap Memorial Day sale, I have finally been able to buy a membership to the David Pakman Show. I've been wanting to for a while, but couldn't quite find the funds. Sometimes sales are not as amazing as they are made out to be, but this really was a great discount and it made my membership possible. Super excited to be on board and to be putting my money where my mind is. Keep it up. Your work is so needed. Thank you, Stephanie. You know, I spoke on a live stream last week. I was genuinely bummed out. I got about 24 emails when my paternity leave started saying things like, David, I just signed up and now you're on paternity leave. Cancel my membership. Or I didn't know I was going to be paying for repeats. Or you think you can just abandon your audience and keep my YouTube subscription? You're out of your mind. And I was so bummed out because it's like, guys, aren't we progressive? Aren't we in favor of paid paternity leave? That doesn't mean you have to fund my paternity leave, but like I am self-employed at the end of the day, right? Where do you think the money comes from? And in particular, from the people that don't even pay, the show is free. Like there's a little bit of entitlement in saying, how dare I take time off from something you get literally for free. You don't pay anything for the show. So I love that a bunch of people like Stephanie and others later got in touch and said, David, I apologize on behalf of those people. Those are not real progressives. Real progressives would understand what's going on here and the importance of paternity leave. But it was a little bit of a bum out moment. Like, and also I said this on my recent live stream too. This is kind of why the right wins, because they, you know, the example I gave was you've got all these right wingers who fund Charlie Kirk. Do you think they're watching his show or counting his days off or whatever? No, they just go, this guy is saying the types of things that we want said. So we're just going to fund it. And that's it. And this is one of the real differences between left and right. And we've experienced it on the show many, many times before. The right gets, you've got to just fund this stuff and let it exist because you think it should exist. And, you know, counting days off or talking about repeats, it's a little bit concerning. All right, there's my rant. I'm off the soapbox. Tom wrote in about LGBT nomenclature, and Tom says this is a semantics correction suggestion. I think this is Tom writing. I think there's a push to revert to the initial LGBT instead of LGBTQ or LGBTQ plus to stop the disgruntled sighs of people thinking, oh, LGBTQ, A, B, C, D, it's just too much. People that I know personally that are active in the community always say LGBT for this reason. I have never changed, to be perfectly frank. I've been saying LGBT from the start. I don't think I ever used LGBT plus or LGBTQ. I have no desire to exclude anyone from any group with which they identify. But I am, it's interesting. It hasn't even occurred to me to change the word I use because I know that my audience knows exactly the group I'm talking about. Whether or not I say LGBT or LGBTQ for queer, people that identify, which is, I guess, a more general term, my audience knows my views on this. My audience knows my inclusivity on this issue. So I've just never felt the need. And quite frankly, nobody's ever really corrected me that I'm aware of. I mean, okay, I don't look at YouTube comments, but I think people sort of get the point of the language I use. But yes, I have noticed I am seeing a lot of LGBT appearing again rather than the longer ones. Listen, we're fighting for people's rights. Let's get people rights. That's what I care about. Ryan says masks are traumatizing, but RoboCop guards are just fine. Yeah, this is a really good commentary on the armed teachers thing. Ryan says, just wanted to point out that forcing kids to wear masks would cause irreparable damage to children's psyche. Sure, it would save a few lives, but we simply can't risk our kids' well-being. Oh, but let's go ahead and arm the teachers, hire an army of armed guards, maybe even build a few RoboCops at the entrance of the schools. They'll be fine with that. Right. Yeah. And the point is one I've tweeted about previously. We couldn't do masks in schools because it would just be too traumatizing to the children. But it's fine to arm teachers, send kids to school with bulletproof backpacks and ballistic shield blankets and all of these things. That's fine. But the masks were just too much. It's crazy. It's crazy. And lastly, today from Julie. Julie says, David, sir, I'm embarrassed and almost feel sorry for the triggered projectionist Trumpists that think they're trolling you. Most of us see through their blatant failed attempts to own the libs and might find it amusing if it weren't so sad. You're obviously doing something right. Keep up the tremendous work. Thank you, Julie. Julie adds a PS. PS, please don't shave your head when you hit the 2 million subscriber mark on YouTube. Well, let's see if we can get me past the 1.5 million subscriber mark first, and then we'll figure out, listen, if we got to 2 million, it would be such a major milestone. I would consider shaving my head. I don't know that anybody would care about it, but I would consider doing it. info@davidpakman.com. Send me your thoughts.